The man on the conference room screen had my face, my voice, and the blue work shirt my wife used to say made me look 10 years younger. He sat in my home office beneath Ellen's framed photograph and said, "I have reviewed the North Star offer. Selling the dealership is the responsible choice, and Bryce has my full authority to complete the agreement." Then the lights came up, and my son looked across the table at me as if he had just done me a kindness. "I never recorded that," I said. Bryce lowered his eyes. "Dad, denying your own words only proves why we can't wait any longer." No one defended me. They watched with the careful sympathy people use around a man they have already decided is confused. I looked back at the frozen image. The digital clock behind my shoulder read 8:17. In the glass covering Ellen's photograph, its reflection read 8:12. My son had built a lie out of my face, and he had forgotten what I used to build for a living. My name is Frank Mercer. I was 63 when my own board voted to suspend my authority. Until that morning, I had believed humiliation arrived loudly. I thought it would feel like shouting, slammed doors, maybe a fist against a table. Instead, it sounded like 7 people turning pages while the board attorney read an emergency motion in a level voice. Mercer Auto Group had started with one gravel lot on the east side of Columbus. My father sold used trucks from a trailer with a heater that worked only when the wind was blowing the right direction. By the time I was old enough to help, the trailer was gone, the lot was paved, and every Saturday began with him handing me a broom. I did not stay in the car business at first. I spent 35 years designing, installing, and repairing broadcast systems for local television stations. I knew how to trace a bad signal through a wall full of cables. I knew how one dropped frame could expose an edit, how fluorescent lights revealed timing errors, and how a room had a sound signature just as surely as a person had a fingerprint. When I retired from broadcasting, I took over financial oversight at the dealership. My father was gone by then. My wife, Ellen, had helped keep the company alive through 2 recessions and 1 disastrous expansion. After she died, part of her ownership share went into a trust for our granddaughter, Maya. My son Bryce handled daily operations. At 36, he was polished, energetic, and never short of a plan. Employees liked that he remembered birthdays. Younger board members liked that he spoke in percentages and called every expense an investment. I liked that he seemed willing to carry what I was tired of carrying. But Bryce and I had been speaking around each other for years. He said I was afraid of change. I said he confused speed with direction. Whenever the argument got close to something personal, I found a reason to discuss inventory or margins instead. That was my worst habit. I treated silence like patience because patience sounded wiser. The emergency meeting had been called with less than 12 hours' notice. Bryce said North Star Auto Network had made an offer to buy all 3 Mercer locations, and the offer would expire in 7 days. I had not seen the full agreement. I had asked the board to postpone discussion until our attorney reviewed the employee protections and Ellen's trust provisions. Bryce answered by playing the video. After my denial, he told the board I had recorded it 2 nights earlier. He said I had recently experienced episodes of confusion and had asked him to handle the announcement privately. The lie was clever because it turned every objection into a symptom. If I raised my voice, I was unstable. If I forgot one detail, I was declining. If I insisted I had never seen the offer, I was proving his point. The board did not strip my shares. It temporarily suspended my chair authority and access to the deal process pending an independent capacity review. That distinction mattered legally. In the room, it felt like a group of strangers had placed a hand over my mouth. Before I tell you what I found, tell me this in the comments. Would you confront your own son immediately or stay quiet until he could no longer deny the proof? If you value stories like this, subscribe. Before I left, I asked Bryce one question. Where is the original recording? The home recording app deleted it after upload. Which app? He gave a tired little sigh. This is exactly what I was worried about. That answer told me more than an accusation would have. Digital files do not vanish because someone calls them original. Systems make copies, previews, thumbnails, backups, and logs. A missing source can be innocent. A missing source combined with a son who will not name the software is a direction. I walked to my car without arguing. I knew two things. The reflection proved the video deserved examination, but not that Bryce had made it. Compression, glare, or an irregular refresh rate might explain the clocks. And if I accused my son publicly before I had more, he would use my anger as the second half of his story. So I did what had saved me during 1,000 broken broadcasts. I stopped staring at the picture people wanted me to see and started tracing the signal backward. By noon, my building badge no longer opened the executive entrance. I tried it once, heard the red electronic chirp, and stepped back. A receptionist I had hired 12 years earlier hurried toward the glass. She would not look directly at me when she said Bryce had changed my access for my own protection. My nameplate was already missing from the upstairs office. That afternoon, an email went to all 74 employees saying I had voluntarily stepped away because of health concerns. A 30-second clip from the fake video went to managers and investors. My phone filled with messages that began with the same gentle phrase, "I heard about your retirement." One service technician wrote that he would never forget what I had done for his family. Another told me to enjoy the years I had left. I sat at my kitchen table reading condolences for a mind I had not lost. Maya arrived just after 6. She was 19, studying accounting at community college, and still carried grief for Ellen in ways that looked practical from the outside. She cataloged family photographs, she labeled holiday videos, she kept receipts from places where the two of them had eaten lunch. She set her backpack down and asked, "Did you make that video?" I answered too fast. "No." "What format did Bryce send you?" Her expression changed. "I didn't ask about the file." "The format may tell us whether—" "Grandpa, I asked if you made it." "I did not." She nodded, but I could see the question I had failed to answer. She wanted to know whether I was frightened, whether she should be frightened, and whether our family had just split in two. I had responded as if she were a junior engineer reporting a fault. Then she pulled a document from her bag. Bryce had asked her to sign a consent form connected to Ellen's trust. Without the trust's consent, North Star could not acquire a clean controlling interest. Bryce had told her that refusing might cost hundreds of people their jobs. "There are 74 employees," I said. "I know." Did he really say hundreds? Twice? I read the form. It was not a routine acknowledgement. It waived the trust's right to challenge certain sale conditions after closing. "Do not sign this." Maya folded her arms. "Because it is bad for the trust or because you want to stop Dad? Both can be true." He said, "You might say that." There it was. Bryce had prepared her for my answer just as he had prepared the board for my denial. I told her the clock reflection did not match. She looked skeptical, and she was right to. 5 minutes on a clock was not enough to condemn her father. I promised I would not ask her to choose between us based on suspicion. I asked only that she give the trust document to an attorney before signing anything. That was the first useful promise I made all day. The next morning, my attorney sent formal preservation notices to the dealership North Star and the company that hosted our electronic deal room. The notices covered the uploaded video, presentation drafts, audit histories, access records, and internal messages related to my alleged approval. I did not log into a system, ask a loyal employee for a password, or touch Bryce's laptop. If this reached court, how we obtained the evidence would matter almost as much as what the evidence showed. I also hired an independent digital forensics examiner. I will not pretend I understood every modern tool she used. My experience gave me questions, not automatic answers. She obtained the exact board copy through counsel, hashed it, documented its transfer, and examined it while I sat across from her. We enlarged the frame containing Ellen's photograph. "The clocks are inconsistent," she said, "but I would not lead with this. Compression? Possibly. Reflection geometry, frame reconstruction, display refresh? There are innocent arguments. I can tell the facial region has been heavily processed, but video conferencing and export can also do that." That was not what I wanted to hear, which made it useful. She separated the audio and played the approval line several times. On the phrase responsible choice, I heard a breath that tightened something in my chest, not because it sounded false, because it sounded familiar. 6 years earlier, a reporter had interviewed me after we closed a repair shop whose lift inspections had been falsified. I had said shutting it down was the responsible choice, even though it cost us money. The interview had aired on local television and remained in the station's public archive. I called my old station and requested the broadcast through its normal archive service. That evening, the examiner placed the two recordings side by side. My 6-year-old voice said it was the responsible choice. The fake said, selling the dealership is the responsible choice. The cadence matched. More importantly, a low air conditioning hum rose at the same fraction of a second. A tiny microphone bump sat beneath the first syllable of responsible in both files. The breath before choice was not merely similar, it was the same breath. Bryce had not recorded me saying the sentence at home. Someone had assembled it from words I had spoken on television. The examiner warned me that this proved sourcing, not authorship. Anyone could access the interview. I thanked her. Every good investigation needs someone willing to tell you where the evidence stops. At 10 that night, Bryce released a second recording. He sent it to the board as an answer to my preservation request. This one was audio only. My alleged voice said, Bryce knows what has to be done. I'm tired of fighting him. Bryce wrote that I had left the message several weeks earlier after a disagreement about the sale. Two board members called to urge me to accept an evaluation and avoid further embarrassment. One spoke so slowly I nearly laughed. The second recording was meant to overwhelm the first doubt. People who could imagine one manipulated file found it harder to imagine two. Bryce understood repetition. If a lie arrives often enough, people stop examining it and start arranging their behavior around it. I listened to the message in the dark. It was my voice. It even contained the soft rasp I got after talking all day. For a moment, knowing it was false did not protect me from the violation. Someone had entered every public word I had ever spoken and treated my identity like a box of spare parts. Then Maya called. What shirt were you wearing in the board video? She asked. Blue, the one your grandmother bought me. There was a long silence. I filmed you in that shirt. The year after Ellen died, Maya had made a family tribute for what would have been our 40th anniversary. She had recorded me in my home office, sitting beneath Ellen's photograph and reading a letter I had written during our first year of marriage. I had struggled to finish it. Between attempts, I sat silently, looked down at the paper, looked back toward the camera, and tried to collect myself. Bryce had asked Maya to upload all the unused clips to a shared family folder. He claimed he wanted to make a shorter version for Ellen's birthday. Maya still had the original memory card. She brought it to the examiner the next morning. We did not alter it. We documented its serial number, made a verified copy, and watched the unused footage. There I was in the same chair, in the same shirt, at the same camera angle. I never said a word about North Star. I never approved a sale, but I gave the camera everything a synthetic editor would need: long, unobstructed views of my face, small head movements, blinks, mouth positions, and several clean turns toward the photograph. At 8:12 in the source clip, I looked directly at the camera. 5 minutes later, I turned toward Ellen's picture. Whoever made the fake had combined moments from different parts of that recording. The wall clock came from one moment. Its reflection came from another. The detail that exposed the lie had survived because Bryce's editor had concentrated on my face and ignored the woman beside me in the glass. Maya covered her mouth as she watched. I gave him this. You gave your father family footage, I said. He chose what to do with it. I should have asked why he wanted all the unused clips. No. Trust is not consent to fraud. She looked at me then, and I realized I had finally spoken to her as a grandfather instead of a supervisor. The examiner identified reconstructed frames around my mouth and cheeks. She mapped movements in the fake to specific passages in Maya's source footage. Combined with the copied audio, we could now show how the video had been made. We still could not prove who ordered it. That proof arrived from a man named Nolan Reed. Nolan had produced digital advertising avatars for the dealership. Bryce had hired him for online campaigns, including a virtual salesperson who could present offers in several languages. When our attorney contacted him, Nolan initially said the work was confidential. After receiving the preservation notice, he provided project files and company account messages through his own counsel. Nolan claimed he believed I had approved the synthetic video as an internal demonstration. Bryce had supplied Maya's family footage, links to my television interviews, and a script. When Nolan asked for a signed consent form, Bryce replied from his company account, "He has already agreed. I just need the video to make the board comfortable." The project folder was created the day before the emergency board meeting. The finished file was exported the following morning. Bryce had told the board I recorded it 2 nights earlier. Nolan would not agree to appear publicly. He feared being sued by both the dealership and North Star, but his counsel allowed the examiner to authenticate the project package, and the messages matched copies preserved on the dealership server under the formal request. I thought that would be enough to stop the sale. I underestimated how badly some people wanted the video to be real. Bryce told the board that Nolan had produced a harmless mock-up after I gave verbal approval. He said I was now exploiting a labeling mistake to reverse a business decision I regretted. He claimed Maya's footage was used with family permission and that the second voice message came from a real call. Then he did something more damaging than deny the evidence. He made the argument about age. He reminded the board I had recently retired. He said I distrusted digital media, resisted expansion, and often forgot where documents were stored. Each fact contained a small truth. I had retired. I did resist his expansion. I had once asked an assistant for a report that was already in front of me. Truth is useful to a liar because it gives people somewhere comfortable to stand. By Monday, my chair suspension had become the subject of local business gossip. A reporter called to ask whether I was medically fit to manage a company. Bryce gave employees a reassuring speech about a difficult family transition. My office furniture was moved into storage. Maya received 3 messages from him in one afternoon. First, he told her he loved her. Then he warned that refusing to sign could destroy the sale. Finally, he said the collapse of the deal would be her responsibility. She showed me the messages and asked how many people would actually lose their jobs if North Star walked away. I had obtained the sale agreement through counsel by then. Buried in an operational efficiency schedule was language allowing North Star to close 2 underperforming locations immediately. More than 40 of our 74 employees could be dismissed within 90 days. Bryce had promised them all protection while negotiating a document that protected almost none of them. "Why does he need this so badly?" Maya asked. I had been asking the same question. Ambition explained wanting the sale. It did not explain risking the company, his family, and possible prosecution on a fake video that could be exposed. The answer came from Martin Hale, our company controller. Martin had worked for us for 11 years and had spent the previous week looking physically ill. He came to my attorney's office carrying a locked document case. He said he had waited because Bryce told him the North Star transaction would repair everything. Once the fake recordings appeared, Martin understood that waiting might make him part of the deception. The records showed that Bryce had personally guaranteed a large loan used for a failed luxury vehicle expansion. That alone would have been his problem. But to secure better terms, he had pledged dealership equipment as collateral without board approval and presented internal authorization that Martin said he had never issued. The lender's review deadline was the same Friday as our sale vote. If the dealership sold, the debt could be settled quietly from transaction proceeds. If it did not, the lender would notify the board and challenge the collateral documents. North Star had also promised Bryce a regional executive position after closing. He was not selling to save the company. He was selling the company to save himself. Martin's records were powerful, but I would not use them as gossip. Counsel obtained a sworn statement, secured the originals, and notified the board's independent committee. Meanwhile, Denise Calder, an outside compliance officer appointed after our preservation request, retrieved the deal room audit history. I was not present when she accessed it. She exported the logs, verified their signatures, and sealed the evidence so no one could claim I had altered company records. She told our attorney the history contained older presentation versions that had not been visible to ordinary users. She would not tell me more before the hearing. That restraint frustrated me and reassured me at the same time. If the process bent for me because my name was on the building, Bryce could say the result had been arranged. I needed rules that held even when they inconvenienced me. With 3 days left, I asked Bryce to meet me at the original dealership lot. The old sales trailer was gone, but one corner of the showroom still held the wooden desk my father used after he could finally afford walls. Bryce arrived 10 minutes late and remained standing. "Call off the vote," I said. "Tell the board the video was unauthorized, give them the loan records. You will face consequences, but you can stop making them worse." He gave me a cold smile. "You already decided I did it. I have the source footage. I have Nolan's messages. I know about the loan." The smile disappeared. For a few seconds, he looked like the boy who used to wait beside the service door after school. Then his face closed again. "You want to know why I had to fix this?" he asked. "Because you never let me build anything. You pledged property that was not yours. I made one expansion bet. You made mistakes for 30 years and called them experience. Then tell the board that. Use your own voice." He leaned both hands on my father's desk. "You care more about that company than you ever cared about us. Mom was dying and you were still at work. Every time she asked where you were, I had to make an excuse for you. Now you hide behind her trust like that proves you loved her." I had prepared for denial. I had prepared for anger. I had not prepared for the truth inside his accusation. During Ellen's final year, I worked longer hours than the dealership required. There was always a reason: a refinancing package, an audit, a property dispute. I told myself I was protecting the future she had helped build. In reality, I was terrified of sitting beside her and watching the strongest person I knew become weaker. I used responsibility as an alibi for fear. "You're right about that year," I said. Bryce blinked. "I stayed at work because I was afraid to watch your mother get weaker. I called it responsibility because cowardice was harder to say. You deserved better from me. So did she." His eyes filled, but his jaw tightened. "Then let me finish what you couldn't. Your pain explains why you hate my decisions. It does not give you my face, my voice, or Maya's future. The sale is happening." He walked out before I could answer. For most of my life, I believed an apology should solve the problem that caused it. That afternoon taught me otherwise. I could admit what I had done to my son without accepting what he had done to all of us. Accountability did not have to be traded. There was room for both. The next morning, I announced through counsel that I would no longer oppose the sale presentation. I agreed to appear at Friday's final board meeting and record a fresh statement confirming my retirement. Bryce called within 12 minutes. "You're doing the right thing," he said. His relief was so immediate that it hurt. I told him I had one condition. The first video had created confusion, so the new statement had to be recorded live in the dealership's advertising studio and streamed directly to the board, North Star, and a protected feed for employees. No pre-recorded file, no upload, one continuous signal. Bryce agreed. A live appearance would make me look cooperative and silence the last doubters. What he did not remember was that I had helped design that studio's original signal system when the dealership began producing its own commercials. The equipment had been upgraded, but its architecture was familiar. Multiple cameras, a hardware switcher, clean audio paths, and a confidence monitor showing exactly what the audience received. I did not need secret access. The board authorized an independent production crew and the examiner to supervise the feed. I asked for the same chair, the same blue shirt, and a wide shot that included the wall clock and Ellen's photograph. Bryce thought I was helping him make the first lie believable. Maya thought I might actually be surrendering. I found her in the studio hallway before the meeting, holding the unsigned trust form. "Are you going to approve it?" she asked. "No." "Then why did you tell him you would record a retirement statement?" "Because I am retiring from daily control. I should have done that cleanly a year ago, but retirement and consent are not the same thing." She studied me. "You have a plan. We have evidence." That sounded like a correction. It was. I told her she would decide for herself whether to speak. I would not put words in her mouth, even words that helped me. She slipped the trust form into her folder and said, "Good." The afternoon before the vote, the board circulated Bryce's agenda. My retirement confirmation was first. The sale vote was second. The trust consent was third. He had allowed 10 minutes between my statement and the decision that would end 3 generations of local ownership. The independent crew traced the live signal in front of both attorneys. One camera fed the boardroom while a second made a continuous safety copy, and the examiner received the same signal. No one in my family controlled the output. A real recording has a history outside the image, people behind cameras, clocks moving forward, and audio belonging to a specific room. The demonstration would create that history while everyone watched. In my old office, the shelves were bare except for the pale rectangle where Ellen's photograph had stood. My nameplate lay in an open packing box. I picked it up, then put it back. The next day could not be about reclaiming a room. If the board stopped the sale only to restore me exactly as I had been, we would have learned nothing. That night, Maya called from her car. Bryce had asked her to sit beside him during the meeting so the board would see the family united. She had refused. What if they still believe him, she asked. Then we use every lawful appeal available. That is a very grandpa answer. I'm trying to improve. She was quiet for a moment. I don't want to speak just to save you. You shouldn't. I want to speak because that video of Grandma's belongs to our family, and he turned it into a weapon. Then say that, in your words. Before we hung up, she told me she had placed the original memory card in the examiner's custody. She would bring no private copy and accept no last-minute file from either side. My granddaughter understood the principle faster than the adults in the room. Fairness was not helping the person you loved. It was refusing to rig the process for anyone. Friday afternoon, every seat in the boardroom was occupied. North Star's representatives sat near the screen. Martin was present with counsel. Denise sat beside the sealed audit export. The independent examiner controlled her own equipment. Several long-term employees watched through an internal stream that could not be copied or forwarded. Bryce stood at the head of the table in a dark suit. He looked exhausted but composed. My father has prepared a final statement, he said. I hope everyone will receive it with compassion. The studio light turned red. On the confidence monitor, I saw the exact frame the board saw. I sat in the same chair wearing the same shirt. Ellen's photograph stood behind me. The digital clock was visible over my shoulder. I looked into the lens. Last week you watched my face approve a sale. Today, I'm going to show you everything that video could not fake. I paused and turned toward Ellen's photograph. Please watch the clock itself and the clock reflected in the glass. For 30 seconds, I moved my head, lifted one hand, and asked the camera operator to keep the shot continuous. The clock advanced. Its reflection advanced with it. A real room does not choose between two times, I said. Light reaches the clock and its reflection in the same continuous moment. In the approval video, the clock reads 8:17, while the reflection reads 8:12. That happened because my face and the room were reconstructed from different moments in an older recording. The examiner took over the feed. She displayed Maya's original source footage beside the fake. Frame by frame, she showed the 8:12 section used for my forward gaze and the 8:17 section used for my turn toward the photograph. She highlighted synthesized areas around my mouth, cheeks, and jaw. One board member asked whether ordinary compression could create the discrepancy. Compression can produce artifacts, the examiner said. It cannot make the reflected clock preserve a different source moment while facial movements map to two documented passages of the original footage. Bryce interrupted. No one disputes that a demonstration was created. Dad approved it verbally. I had expected that. The feed switched to the 6-year-old television interview. My old voice filled the room. Closing the shop was the responsible choice. Then the fake approval played. Selling the dealership is the responsible choice. The examiner isolated the breath, the microphone bump, and the background hum. She aligned their waveforms. They were identical. The approval sentence was not recorded in Frank's home office, she said. It contains copied audio from this archived broadcast combined with fragments from additional sources. Bryce looked toward North Star's representatives. That was part of the demo. The authorization still stands. Then the original authorization should exist somewhere other than the synthetic output, I said. You called me. Produce the call record. It was through an app. Name it. He did not. Denise broke the seal on the audit export. She explained that users could replace visible deal room files but could not rewrite earlier versions or the server-signed activity log. My attorney's preservation request had arrived before the retention window expired, and Denise, not I, had retrieved and authenticated the data. An earlier version of Bryce's presentation contained a black placeholder between the financial slides: Frank approval, synthetic final. No one moved. The upload history showed Bryce's account adding the finished video at 2:14 Wednesday morning, after he said I had recorded it, but before he claimed to have received the file. The related log linked to Nolan's invoice for voice synthesis and facial reconstruction. Beneath it was Bryce's message: "He has already agreed, I just need the video to make the board comfortable." Bryce pushed back. "That proves he agreed. It proves what you told the contractor," the board attorney said. Bryce accused me of arranging the evidence. Denise replied that I had no access to the audit history and that the server signatures validated against records held by the host. When he attacked the examiner, she explained that the committee had independently reproduced her findings from preserved sources. One excuse at a time, the room closed around him. Then Bryce looked at Maya. "Show them the consent," he said. "Tell them Grandpa has been pressuring you." Maya stood. Her hands trembled, but her voice did not. She connected the original memory card to the examiner's isolated computer. The first frame showed Ellen's photograph and the yellow flowers Maya had brought that day. "I made this after my grandmother died," she said. "Dad asked for every unused clip because he said he wanted another family video. I trusted him." She played a few seconds of me silently reading Ellen's letter. "This was made to remember her. Grandpa never discussed North Star or gave anyone permission to make his face say something else." Bryce softened his voice. "Maya, we can deal with the family issues later. Sign the consent so the employees are protected." She opened the sale agreement to the operational efficiency schedule and read the clause allowing 2 locations to close. "You told me hundreds of jobs would disappear if I refused. There are 74 employees, and this contract lets North Star cut more than 40 of them after I sign. That language is standard. So is asking before you use someone's identity." She placed the unsigned consent form on the table. "I won't authorize the sale." I had spent the week afraid Bryce would force her to choose between her father and me. Instead, she chose a principle neither of us owned. Martin was the last witness. He authenticated the unauthorized collateral pledge, the lender's Friday deadline, and the amount that would surface if North Star did not close. The attorney then displayed North Star's private offer, making Bryce a regional executive after the acquisition. The public story had been modernization. The real story was a deadline, a hidden debt, and a job waiting on the other side of the sale. North Star requested a recess. Bryce followed its representatives toward the door, but they told him to contact only their counsel. Minutes later, North Star withdrew, citing undisclosed conflicts and invalid authorization. The board canceled the vote, removed Bryce as general manager pending an independent forensic review, and restricted his access to company systems, accounts, and trust matters. Professionals would handle any civil or criminal decisions. No one cheered. Bryce stood alone at the end of the table. "You've destroyed everything I was trying to build," he said to me. I saw his anger and fear and the child I had once left waiting outside too many closed doors. "You didn't borrow my authority, Bryce," I said. "You manufactured it." He looked away. For one dangerous second, I wanted to add something cruel. Then I understood that exposing him was necessary. Enjoying his humiliation would make the truth smaller. So I said only, "What happens next depends on what you say in your real voice." The weeks afterward were not simple. Investigators reviewed the finances, the lender challenged the collateral, and Bryce lost the North Star position before it existed. Some employees blamed him, others blamed me. Evidence can settle a decision without settling every opinion. The board hired an independent manager. I remained chairman during the transition, but voluntarily gave up operational authority and created an outside supervised succession process. If I demanded accountability from Bryce, I had to apply it to myself. Proving I was capable did not mean pretending I should manage forever. Maya's trust retained its shares. The dealership stayed locally owned while the board considered ethical investment offers with enforceable employee protections. After the evidence copies were secured, the board attorney returned the blue shirt, memory card, and Ellen's photograph. I carried the photograph home in both hands. Maya was waiting in my office. She set the frame back in its usual place, then adjusted it until the wall clock appeared clearly in the glass. Still checking the reflection? I asked. Maybe. I sat down. I owe you an apology. For what Dad did? When you asked whether I made the video, I answered with file formats. I gave you procedures when you needed your grandfather. She looked at the floor. I was scared you were actually forgetting things. I know. Then I was scared Dad had done it. That was worse. I took her hand. I should have asked how you felt before I asked what you knew. She squeezed my fingers. You can still ask. So I did, and for once I did not interrupt the answer with a solution. Several weeks later, we recorded a genuine employee message in one wide shot. The clock and Ellen's photograph were visible, and Maya stood behind the camera reflected in the glass. I said the company would remain local during the review and that no employee would be asked to trust a promise missing from the next agreement. I also announced the independent management structure and my reduced role. When the recording ended, Maya asked whether I wanted to delete the unused footage. On the monitor, I was trying to read Ellen's letter without crying. Bryce had changed the footage's purpose, and for days I had been unable to watch it without seeing the fake. No, I said. Your grandmother was in the room when we made that. He doesn't get to change what it means. My final meeting with Bryce had no cameras, board members, or attorneys. I did not offer forgiveness he had not asked for, and he did not offer the confession I still wanted. I told him I had failed him during his mother's final year and would answer for it, but my guilt would not become a blank check for his choices. If we ever rebuild this, I said, we start with what is real. No speeches for the board, no version of me you need to defeat your voice and mine. He did not answer, but when I left, he was looking at me instead of the floor. I once believed the strongest signal was the cleanest one. Age taught me differently. A real voice can shake, admit shame, say no without hatred, and say I was wrong without surrendering truth. My son used a perfect imitation to take my authority. What exposed him were the imperfect things the imitation could not understand. A reflected clock, a breath from an old interview, a granddaughter's memory, and the history a system kept when no one was watching. If this story made you think about who has the right to use our voices and faces, share your answer below, like the video, and subscribe for more stories about family, truth, and accountability.